Welcome to the Chef Fit Podcast episode. I think it might be 47, folks. It is 47. This is part two of our mental health discussion, as it's a massive topic, and something that we don't want to gloss over. Last episode that you might have watched, if you haven't watched that, I suggest you watch that before you come and watch this one. That was the mental health epidemic within the industry for chefs. This episode is going to be more geared towards the practical side of, obviously we're going to be talking about the ins and outs, but it's also really about, what you can practically do to sort it out. Because this is where, in my opinion, the industry is lacking. And this is where Chef Fit plays a massive role, is that there isn't a step-by-step, but I'm not here to say that Chef Fit is the fix for mental health, but I think we have indirectly impacted and changed a lot of chefs' lives who were struggling mentally, and completely changed their lives. And I'm not saying that the Chef Fit way was the pill that you take that it fixed, but it was the work that was put in throughout that process that led the chefs to get themselves out of the dark and into the light, so to speak.
Literally saved lives.
Yeah, literally changed lives.
Literally saved lives. Before
we do dive into this, chefs, what I want you to do is, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't be a munter. Subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up, because it's a message that needs to be spread. Same thing with, if you're listening on Podbean or you're listening on iTunes or wherever you might be, create a profile, give us a 5-star review, leave a comment, like the episode that you are listening to. Again, guys, we need your help to actually get this message out there and push Chef Fit forward. So don't be a lurker in the background. Provide some support. We greatly appreciate it. With that in mind, let's dive in. So, Peter, just quickly hashing over what we were talking about in the last episode. So we were talking about really the struggles and the massive problem and the epidemic that is within this industry at the moment. You know what I mean? Where it's just astronomical, the amount of people that are struggling mentally. You know what I mean? Like, the people that you know, the people that I know, friends of friends, colleagues, family, like it's a serious. We
thought it was bad, but it's a lot more worse than I had suspected when I was within that bubble myself.
Yeah.
And that's not just because, it's mostly because when chefs are in that place, they do feel like they are alone. The chef beside them would be in the exact same boat, and you'd look at him and you'd never think it. He'd look back at you, he'd never think that you were in any way not the happiest person in the world.
Totally.
So, it was only true Chef Fit when all of a sudden 30, 40, 50 people, everybody is like, actually, yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And then you look around and go, right, that's not just us. That's not just me in a bubble.
No.
That's the whole industry. That's everybody.
Big time. And I can remember.
It's scary, like.
Yeah, and at that point, that is a very, very good point about, chefs tend to isolate themselves, and you isolate yourself, your feelings, wearing your feelings and wearing your heart on a sleeve, doesn't necessarily, it's a bit like being in the army, you know what I mean? And it's a bit like going to war. If someone is crying or fucking, emotional or upset, in a war zone, like, it's just the two things don't go hand in hand, which is why you're told to toughen up. And chefs are very much programmed to think in the same way because the environment is so harsh. And I remember Alan Sperrin, who's one of the lieutenants with Peter in the Chef Fit Elite now. But when Alan started out in Chef Fit back in 2018, his thing was, he felt like in his first conversation, like, we'll always have a consult with the chef before they join us, and that consult is basically a 45-minute conversation / coaching call where they can unload and unburden a lot of the things that they've been carrying around with them, the issues that they're having, and we can talk about it and give them clarity on where those problems are coming from. Also, I'll game plan for them after, and we'll put a plan of action in place. But with Alan's situation, he felt like a weight had been lifted, like a cloud had lifted off him, because he'd been walking around with this external fucking armor, literally like wearing an external armor. Every day he would go into work, or, every day of his life, more or less, as a father, as the fucking alpha male in his family who had to look after the kids, and be strong for his wife, in work then, you know, as one of the leaders in the kitchen, again, had to hold his fucking, you know, control himself, control his emotions, and never show the fact that he was really, really struggling, even through loss in the family, even through really bad health, even through feeling lost personally. He always had to have a front. He always had to wear a mask to truly hide who he was, because the harshness of the environment, if he had opened up, it probably wouldn't have been welcomed. You know what I mean? It probably would have been welcomed. And that's just one example of fucking God knows how many chefs who go through that exact same thing of feeling like they can't fucking talk to someone. So they have to get the breaking point before they actually do open up a conversation. And when the Chef Hits tribe first came alive, you know, it wasn't initially called, I used to call it the tribe before we started it, because that's the ideal situation that I wanted to happen, but I didn't really have a full, you know, it hadn't happened yet. So it's hard to say like, hey, fucking join the tribe. It's like the tribe doesn't exist yet. So Peter and I'd say 14 other chefs who were in that very first 30-day challenge that we did, you know, everyone came into that program as chefs, but no one really knew each other. The only thing that they had in common is they all had a conversation with me on the phone where I had to explain what Chef It was, and this is what we're doing, and this is what the 30-day challenge will cost, and here's what are your goals going to be, and this and that. And when the 15 of them came together, it's obviously a bit nervy. You're in a group full of new people, don't really know what the story is. And then I remember getting a message from Anto. Anto's a good guy. He was a guy I used to work with in a restaurant in Delgany, you know, and I know Anto was struggling, and I knew he was struggling mentally before he came into Chef It. And anxiety was a real problem for him, like a real problem. It was affecting a lot of aspects of his life, you know what I mean? Not being able to interact socially and, you know, affecting relationships, all sorts of shit. And I remember he messaged me about it, you know, and he said, like, listen, man, I'm fucking absolutely shitting myself. Number one, being in the group. I don't really know how to interact. Number two, this is what I'm really struggling with at the moment. And he was telling me the ins and outs of where he was at mentally. And it was a very dire situation, you know, it wasn't anything to fucking scoff at. It was heavy shit, like. And I said to him, and I suppose I put myself out in a limb, and I was like, man, I think it's absolutely vital. You know, I'm willing to talk about my shit on video and my mental health to give you guys permission, but this is a moment of courage for you, man, where there's no judgment in this group. There's no fucking, you know, laughter. It's not a kitchen. You know, we're here to support each other and drive each other forward. So what I want you to do is I want you to do me a favor. I want you to do a video and explain how you're feeling mentally. And in that moment, I remember him jumping on camera, and it was a very, very, very raw video. And as Peter said, until he had come into the group at that time, he didn't really realize that he might have been, you know, the only one who felt the way he felt. And Anto did this video talking about the anxiety, talking about depression, talking about these things and how he was feeling. Nearly every chef in that group was just like, what the fuck? Because they all were feeling similar things mentally, but they had never spoke about it before. And in that moment, that's when the tribe truly became what it was. Because I can remember Liam Kiernan.
It was a massive turning point, yeah.
Huge turning point, because it then became not just a fitness thing. It wasn't just all right, well, we're just changing our lifestyle. Obviously, the health, the fitness, the nutrition, and the structure is a massive, massive part of it. But ultimately, it was the struggle that brought us together. You know what I mean? It was the pain that we'd all been through that brought us together. And in that moment, I can remember receiving messages from Liam Kiernan, who's still in the group today. And if you were to look at him from fucking the day he picked up the phone to me to right now, you wouldn't think he's the same person. Like, you honestly would not think he's the same person. And Liam was like, Anto's a fucking legend. I can't believe that, you know, he was able to express and had the bravery and the courage to express what he was fucking feeling, because I'm feeling the exact same way. And then everyone in the group correlated what was happening in here to what they were doing physically, you know what I mean? And the movement they were suddenly a part of. And I'm sure Peter can attest to that within 3 or 4 weeks, the changes across the board and everyone's not only physical health, but mental health was absolutely enormous. Like,
Gavin, mind blown.
It was insane. And Gav O'Sullivan was another guy, and you know, Gav was open about this on his interview with me that I did with him after the challenge, and he told me that It was like, man, I was on, you know, pretty heavy antidepressants before I joined ChefFit, and you know, after 4 to 5 weeks. And again, a massive disclaimer: I'm not saying ChefFit is a fix for mental health. I'm just saying what someone did whilst they were in ChefFit. But Gav was able to get himself off antidepressants within 6 weeks, you know. And I've had arguments with people. And people have fucking, you know, given me shit in different chef groups and videos that I've done. Who are you to talk about mental health? You know, fucking, you're doing more damage than good is what I've heard from a good amount of people. You know, you're a fucking charlatan, you're this and you're that, which I just kind of scoff at and laugh at, because I don't need to have a fucking...
These are people that could be suffering the most, and they have this block in themselves, and then they're lashing out then because they can't put their hand up and say, I'm struggling with anxiety, I'm depressed, I'm not happy with my life. Totally. They have that all inside. That's why your videos found its way to them as well, as our own lads. And then they can't take the call, they can't send a text, click the link and just find out what's going on, and they have that built up inside them, and then that's another way for them to get it out, you know, to lash back out at the world, especially at somebody who's out there trying to help. Not dragging people in to help, saying, look, there's help here if you want it, here's what we're doing, here's the examples, here's how it works. And then, you know, there's no gun to anybody's head here.
Totally. And I think that's what a lot of people like to feel. Like it's a fucking weird one. Like, regardless of what you do, we live in an outrage culture. We live in a culture where everyone's fucking offended by everything or looking to be offended by something, you know what I mean? And I suppose for me, when I'm very outspoken and opinionated in what I say, that can rub people up the wrong way. I can remember, but here's the issue that I see, because that lash, you know, the backlash that I received, maybe, it outlined the big problem for me in this industry. Is that, number one, people are, you know, instead of people actually getting in the game and trying to do something to help, people like to sit on the side and talk shit, because it's easier to sit on the side and talk shit and pick apart what someone else is doing, even though they're trying to help, versus you actually taking some fucking action yourself. So remember this woman in this chef, it was in Chef's Arts, and she was a therapist, some kind of the psychologist, therapist, whatever. I think she also said she was a chef. It turns out she was making fucking prawn cocktails on a yacht somewhere. But anyway, back to what I'm saying. She commented on one of my videos and just went to fucking town. Like, I'm not saying like had a bad comment to say. She wrote essays about me, essays, on top of this other lad who was also making posts about me, saying this lad's a fucking this and this lad's that. And I remember at the time she was trying to pick apart every aspect of my conversation, and her argument was that your lifestyle and your, you know, exercise and good lifestyle doesn't necessarily correlate to good mental health. Sure, we still have suicides and professional athletes. And I was like, yeah, but we're not talking about professional athletes. That was my whole thing. We're not talking about professional athletes. You know what I mean? I'm talking about a chef who's suffering mentally as a result of his life as a chef, or her life as a chef. You know, and for her, it just didn't click because she didn't like me and she wanted to just keep going down that fucking rabbit hole. And, you know, I made a massive, massive point of this. And I said, you are the problem. You are the exact problem, because you'd rather look at me because I don't have a fucking master's degree in psychoanalysis or psychotherapy, that I'm not able to have a fucking opinion or open up a conversation about mental health. That is fucking bullshit, because this is what everyone does.
Or speak through relative experience.
Through relative experience and through what I've fucking been able to do. And it's like, I'm not talking about being a fixer for mental health. I'm not the fucking magic ticket. What I'm talking about is this is what I believe, and this is what I've applied, and this is what we've proven to be true. So how can you say that it's not true? And very specific about what I say. But anyway, she kept going on, and it really outlined a big, big issue for me, especially in the world at large, that people don't like to take responsibility. So within industries, people don't like to take responsibility for what the fuck is actually happening. And this is across the board. Our government in Ireland don't like to take fucking responsibility for what's happening. It's easier to pass the buck to someone else, you know, for why the problems are happening. When the reality is, if one of you motherfuckers took accountability, you wouldn't be fucking the country over and the people within it so much. And the same thing goes for mental health. People would rather think about the vote, right? And I'm going to use this as an example. In Ireland, there's a clash between the governments right now. And Sinn Féin would be I don't even want to say it, like, yeah, technically the Republican Party, but the reality is
left wing.
They speak for the people. You know what I mean? Because Ireland and Irish people have been getting fucked for so long. Rents are fucking so sky high. Taxes insane. Use of money for anything. Our public transport system is dirt. Education and health is dirt. You know, and we wonder where the fuck all the money's going. And the fucking government are buying a £1 million printer to put into the Dáil, which is the government building. And the printer was so big it couldn't fit in the building. And we're kind of thinking, why are you spending fucking £1 million on a printer when we've got a homelessness crisis, a housing crisis, and a health crisis? What the fuck is going on here? You know what I mean? And rents are skyrocketing, so Irish people can't afford to fucking live in Dublin unless they work in Facebook or Google or they're making fuckloads of money. You know, and there's no accountability. And every member of the Dáil gets €29,000 a year in expenses. And they are fucking, you know, they get, if they're voted out, they also get reimbursed with a lump sum. Like, it's
40K on the day.
Yeah, so corrupt and so fucked. And here's the thing that kills me, and this is what I'm going to bring it back to this mental health thing, that my parents' generation, you know, Peter's parents' generation, people in their fucking mid to late 40s, middle-aged people in Ireland, they're great at talking about, you know, oh, fucking the government this and that. But when it came time to actually go and fucking vote, when it came time to actually go and take action and get these motherfuckers out of there, none of them fucking did it. You know, it was young people and people who've been fucked over for too long that they had no other choice. Now, there's still a debate on whether it's going to go ahead with the new government. It was fucking nearly split down the middle. But it's like these old cunts that are fuck the country are still kind of floating around. And what I'm trying to say is the people that didn't vote, or the people that voted for the old corrupt system, those are the same people who complained, but when it came time to take action, they didn't take any fucking action. And I'm going back to this woman who had a problem with me, that she was like, oh, I'm a therapist on this and on that. She hadn't, I can prove everything I'm saying. When I'm saying that, okay, cool. Well, listen, if we were to change how you're living your life, Chef, if we were to make things, you know, change your life from being extremely unhealthy to extremely healthy, if we were to structure things instead of it being unstructured, if we were to give you a set of principles to live by within your life, if we were to move every single day, if we were to create a routine and structure your days and plan them out, if you were to surround yourself with other chefs going through the same thing as you, who you can relate to, who are motivating, supporting, and keep you accountable, chances are you would turn your life around mentally massively through physical action. And I've proven that to be true because it's happened to fucking well over 100 chefs at this stage in the game since we started. But yet this person couldn't see that. They just wanted to talk about the one thing that they disagreed with that I'd said, instead of going, well, actually, maybe you are having an impact and I agree with you on these things. People like to sit in the bleachers and talk shit instead of actually taking some responsibility, getting in the game and trying to have an impact themselves. And that's a huge problem in this fucking industry. And it's a huge problem worldwide. Lack of accountability by people who could fucking help, you know? And that's a big point for me. And I like to consider what we do in Sheffield and our movement different because we are practical. We don't just talk about the fucking thing. We are taking action on the thing and trying to fix it. Now, it's not easy. That's why I'm saying it's not a magic pill. It's not a magic potion. Like if a chef comes to me and, you know, I've had chefs come to me who were suicidal. I've had chefs come to me who were self-harming, who are fucking, you know, addicted to alcohol, addicted to drugs, seriously, heavily depressed, heavily anxious, lacking confidence, very low self-esteem, you know, struggling with burnout and struggling within their personal life. Those same chefs that came to me, when they made the commitment, they did the work for months on end and they applied exactly what the path would be. So when you take the Sheffield path, you do it with the tribe and you do the work for a long enough period of time, you will change your life. However, that process is not easy. It requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. It requires you to fucking commit to an overall lifestyle change. But if you do that, you'll turn things around, you know, and that's why it's not a fix. But what I'm saying is a lot of the problems within an individual's life in this industry could be changed. It could be changed drastically if you were not only talking about the problem, which is important, but you're able to take action on the problem. So when that woman, and we had that, and I don't want to keep bringing her up, but the conversation, her point was like, no, you're wrong. None of what you're saying is correct. You should just talk to a professional. And I'm saying, well, I don't disagree with you that you should talk to a professional. I think you definitely should, because that's not my problem. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a fucking, I'm not a psychologist. However, I do know what I can do. And I'm very good at getting people to get their shit together within their lives. You know what I mean? And actually structuring things and being disciplined and putting order on things. If you can combine talking to someone with doing that, boom, you've got a perfect recipe. But if we just talk and we open a conversation, it's important, but it's only the first step. It's only the first fucking step, and it doesn't ultimately fix the entire problem. And the thing I want to get across here is that people, mental health is a complicated thing, which is why I'm very, very specific in who I'm referring to. I'm not referring to someone who has a chemical imbalance in their brain, you know what I mean? Who has needed to take heavy antidepressants for their entire life. I'm not talking about people like that. I'm talking about the majority of mental health issues in regards to bouts of depression, bouts of anxiety that happen within this industry are directly linked back to how that chef or front of house person lives their life. Yeah, I'll go again. It's directly correlated to how they live their life. The hours, 50, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. Yeah, incredibly stressful, incredibly pressurized. You're working with people that maybe don't want to hear your problems and aren't open to hearing you out. So therefore, with all that stress, pressure, you pick up a lot of coping mechanisms, the vices, the smoking cigarettes, the doing drugs on a regular basis, the drinking, the smoking weed, the eating shit, the not exercising. You fall into that trap. And when you're in an environment that's highly pressurized and stressful, and you can't talk to anyone, and then you've got all these negative habits that rule your life, all of a sudden you've got a recipe for extremely, extremely poor mental health. That's the situation I'm referring to, and that's the situation I can fix and I can help with. You know what I mean? If the person's willing to commit to doing that work. But when you're in that situation, and this is my argument, that if that's where you're at and you've got all these bad habits and you're living your life in a very negative way, and as a result, you're in a very negative headspace where you're suffering with a bit of depression or you're suffering with anxiety, talking about it will help in the short term, but it won't fix anything. And the reason for that is because as soon as you have the conversation, you're going to feel relieved. And then you're going to go back to living your life in the same way that led you to the problem in the first place. That's the issue. And for so many chefs in this industry, it's like, if you could change how you're living your life is the problem. Obviously, the industry is to blame for that. I get that. It's not your fault at all. You've fallen into the trap the same way all of us have fallen into this trap. However, if how you're living your life is the problem, then if you change how you're living your life, what do you think the result is going to be? It's obviously going to change for a positive. It really is. It's going to change in a very, very positive way. And that's a fact. That's a fact.
And drastically and quickly, because there's this massive restart that happens. Like hitting a reset when you come in and you've done your intro week and you come in and straight away you have all these tasks that are put in front of you. And you're after putting your hand up and taking responsibility and ownership and accountability for your own life. Yeah. And straight away, there's a lot of chefs there that are like, well, I was where you were last week, next person, I was where you were last month. Here's what you need to do. And then once you have that mindset going in, you're like, right, bang, you're lasered in. That's how focused you were. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's this massive restart. It's class. It's amazing the way it works, the way you see it happening.
Yeah. And I think with that in mind, it's like in that moment where you're saying, you go through the intro. So let's say someone applies to join Chef. The reason that the results are so massive physically and mentally is this. When you're struggling in a space where you're stuck in a rut and you're suffering, as I was saying, it feels like your life is out of your control. It's out of your hands. It's chaos, and you're like, every day you're showing up, work's a fucking nightmare. Your services are stressful. Outside of that, you've got nothing going on in your personal life because you're so tired, you're so burnt out. that your life feels like it's out of your hands, it's out of your control. And eventually the pain of that gets so bad that you have to pick up the phone and you have to do something. And that's when a chef will usually pick up the phone to me or Ella and we'll get them started. And in that moment on the phone, I will be able to clarify for that person that the only way that we're going to fix this fucking thing is that if you take responsibility of it and you put your hand up and we commit to fixing it, you know? And then when they do commit to fixing it and they actually apply themselves to it, they go through the intro week, they enter the tribe, they're now being tasked, they've now got a structure and a path to follow. They're doing it with other people. It's competitive, it's engaging, it's challenging. What's happening is you're giving that person the reins of their life back. You're giving that person the reins back. And they didn't feel like they had that before. They didn't feel like they had any control on what's going on. And the reality is you do have control, but you just need the correct structure, you need the correct path, you need the correct guidance, and you need accountability to stop you from getting complacent. And then all of a sudden, through that, you start taking more action. And when you start taking more action and it's geared in the right way, boom, it's like, fuck, my life is actually getting back on track now. I understand. This makes sense. The more exercise I do, the better I feel. You know what I mean? The more results I get, the more accomplished I feel on myself, the more satisfied I feel on myself. And that is a very, very powerful tool. And ultimately, for all people, but men especially, because I'm going to make a point here that 75 to 80% of suicides are male. Yeah? 75 to 80% of suicides are male. And obviously, I have a lot of time for any female chefs. I hope you take a huge amount from my message. But for me as a man and what I've experienced and what I see in this industry is that a lot of men are lost in modern day society. They're lost because masculine men have kind of been, you know, we've been turned down in a way. It's not encouraged for men. And what masculinity actually means, even though it's been bastardized, what masculinity actually means is purpose, having a purpose, being driven towards a vocal point. That is a masculine trait. And it's not to say that females can't. They definitely can have those traits, 110%. But for a man to be happy and alive, you need to have purpose. You need to be in control. You need to be in responsibility of what your purpose actually is and the actions determined to take it. I think a lot of the problems that we have now with mental health are down to men not having a purpose and not feeling like they're worth anything anymore. So when someone asks you a question, what is your purpose? What do you put here to do? A lot of people can't ask that. I guarantee you, and I'm not saying tribe as if chef it, but it's a good example. If we were in a hunter-gatherer tribe, you wouldn't need to answer that question. You'd know straight away what your question was, or what the answer to that question was, because life is simpler in those situations. Where if there's a tribe of 20 people living out in the wilderness, it's like, okay, cool. Well, the strongest of us has to fucking ensure survival for the rest of us by creating a perimeter, determining the difference between us and them, and being able to really understand what we need to do on a daily basis for all of us to survive. Like, that's what purpose is. If I put you in a tribe environment, you would know what your purpose is immediately because it's very obvious. The problem in the modern day sense is society fucking grows so big and we've got such massive populations of people that we've lost connection. We've lost connection with each other, but ultimately we've lost connection with ourselves and our purpose. And most men fall into that trap. So when I talk to chefs and they start getting involved with what we do, all of a sudden they've got this path laid out, they've got this structure, and it's like, shit, I need to hit these targets, I need to hit this fucking thing to get to the next level. Once I hit that level, boom, great, now I'm on to the next level. And through that process of hitting targets and leveling up and improving yourself, you are actually improving yourself across the board and you're becoming an evolved human. But that all comes down to having a purpose, having a reason for getting up in the morning and having a fucking, you know, you're driving towards this thing. Because ultimately that's what a human being needs. We have reward systems. We need to be challenged. We need to overcome the challenge, and then we need to set new challenges and overcome them as well. That's what life is about ultimately. And our psyche and our brain is all linked to that. Majority of the time when you're stuck in a rut, it's because you're stagnant. There's no targets being reached. There's no purpose being fulfilled. There's no direction that we're going in. And I would say to anyone, and a lesson that I learned, even in my own mental health, you know, starting back to jiu-jitsu. So I've gone back to it after having some really bad injuries, and it scares the fuck out of me. It scares the shit out of me, you know. And I was very nervous about starting it. There's a Carlson Gracie school around the corner here. It'd be one of the best schools for jiu-jitsu in the world. And it's in a new place, it's a new environment, and I was shitting myself, and I was making excuses, and I was putting it off. And I forced myself to go last week, and I've now gotten 4 sessions in. And after the first session, I was so nervous and looking for all the excuses in the world to not do it. And I walked out 2.5 hours later, and I don't think I'd ever felt euphoria like it. I don't think I hadn't felt that way in a very long time, even going to the gym and stuff. I'd never felt that way in a long time. And here's the reason, is because that was a very large challenge for me. It was out of my comfort zone. It was something that forced me to, I suppose, what most people need to do. We need to live on our edge. We need to be able to push ourselves into discomfort, push yourself out of your comfort zone. And when you push yourself out of your comfort zone and you meet challenges and you overcome challenges, what happens in your brain is that you get massive, massive releases of serotonin. And it's joy and it's accomplishment and it's a feeling of, fuck, actually, I'm doing this thing now that makes me feel happy. And so many of us lack that in our lives, because we just go from, okay, well, I just go to work, and work, you can kind of just fucking shuffle through work, not really think about it. And outside of that, I'm just kind of on the couch doing fuck all. But it's like when you don't have that challenge in front of you, it's very easy to get into a very bad headspace. The whole point of what I'm telling you here, Chef, is that you need to have something that challenges you. You need to set things and achieve them. You know what I mean? Because in that challenge, you realize what your purpose is, you know? And when you don't have challenge, when you don't have something to get up and fight for, you ultimately don't have a purpose in life. And when you don't have a purpose in life, you don't see the point in life. And that's, you know, that's something that all of us should bear in mind. You know, so sure, we could talk about, like, that's ultimately the mechanism of what's happening, in my opinion. And when I think about what you should do, Chef, it is there. You know, it's there at any time should you want to take that step forward, because that will give you accountability, that will remove complacency from your life, that will structure things and give you something to fight for again. And when you have something to fight for again, boom, your life will change. But when you don't have anything to fight
Also, Cam, you need to have your thing.
Yeah.
In a way, all chefs, and I'm not generalizing this time, all chefs have their work and then they have their family time, and they don't have their thing. And it's not selfish for you to want to have your thing outside of work and outside of family for yourself. Like, the most important thing you said was, if the way you're living your life is the problem, you change the way you're living your life. But you need to have your own thing that you're going to be doing in order for that to change. It has to be just you. You have to recognize straight away, or not straight away, you have to recognize when you can that you're having a problem, find out what the problem is, and then figure out where you can go from there.
Totally. 100%. And it is about finding that thing specific to you, you know, like, what is that thing that's going to fucking make you happy? Like, go and do that thing. You need to challenge yourself with it, though. You need to be able to overcome adversity with it. And that's why I say there's no such thing as a quick fix that actually works. They don't work, you know. And for a lot of chefs who struggle, you'll make a lifestyle change and you'll have this instant gratification mindset of trying something, hoping for the best, trying the gym, hoping for the best. But ultimately, the reason that that's not working is not because it's not the right tactic. The reason that it's not working is because it's not addressing your problem. You know, it's not addressing your problem. As Peter said, you need to have your thing, you know, and it needs to be about changing the overall picture and not just one color in the picture. You know, don't just try a diet and think that you're going to change your fucking mental health and your life with it. You're not. You know what I mean? And don't think by losing a couple of kilos that you're going to turn your life around, because you're not. Those things are byproducts of a good process. If you change how you live your life, you'll lose the weight. If you change how you live your life, your nutrition will automatically be better, you know? But you got to change the entire lifestyle and not just change the fucking, you know, oh, well, I'm trying this thing or I'm trying that thing, or I'm just not doing anything, you know? And as Peter said, you got to be able to identify it yourself. And a good way of identifying it is having a conversation, honestly. Like, if you're feeling bad, like if you're in a very, very bad situation, you're feeling terrible in your head, you know, and things are not going your way, sometimes it's a conversation that's required. Someone who's not going to provide judgment, you know, a no judgment conversation where you can open up exactly about how you feel. And ideally that person can give you an objective take on what your issue is. the consult that chefs have with me or Ella when they join, like that's a form of that conversation where it's a bit of an illuminating one. They're like, oh fuck yeah, actually, you know what, I think like this is a problem, like I need to fix this thing, you know. And that's a moment of self-awareness. If you have a family member, if you have a work colleague, if you can go and talk to a professional, something that will, or you could talk to us, something that will open you up and get you to a place where, you know, it's like, shit, I need to fix that. Because once you realize that, once you take responsibility, that's the wheels being put in motion. It's no point in me just saying it. You know, I give my opinion on what you should do, but unless you know that you need to do it, you know, it's not worth doing. So again,
Yeah.
You know,
you just got to recognize it. That's the main part.
Totally, 110%. So yeah, that's our thoughts on the matter. What I want us to do, guys, regardless of where you're at, if you are struggling, have a conversation. That's the first step. Take that step forward. If you feel that how you're ultimately living your life is leading you to having the problem in the first place, as in having a very unhealthy lifestyle, being extremely stressed and under pressure, and having no work-life balance, if you feel that that's the problem that you're having, you know, and you've got low self-esteem as a result, then you can talk to us from Chef Fit and we will get you started and we will get you on the path to fixing it. If that's not the point and something else, talk to a professional. But regardless, recognize the problem and let's try and fix the problem. That's the key thing. And put it into action practically. Yeah, that's
big time.
That's our podcast for today, folks. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you're watching it on YouTube. 5-star review on Podbean and iTunes. Please subscribe to the channel. And yeah, much love to all of you. And keep fighting the fucking good fight. No matter how bad you're struggling, there's always something that can be done. And no matter how bad the situation is, it's always salvageable. Remember that, folks, wherever you may be. Peter, Chief, I think we'll leave it there, my friend. Good shit.
Nice one.
Have a nice old night's sleep. Folks, thank you so much. That's our episode for today, tonight, this morning. Be good, be safe.
Peace out.
You know it, son. Winter's coming. Be good.